Amazing. For logistics reasons, I would ask that we all keep our mics off just for the moment. Amazing. Good afternoon, young female leaders. Welcome to Summit for Democracy Takeaway event. My name is Divine Karen Yamlamba. I am the Stakeholder and Engagement Associate at the Amazon Leadership Initiative, and I am also your host and facilitator for today. As we all know, the end of March 2023 marked a very special and symbolic time for the ADI. Together with Open Society Foundation, Save the Children Zambia, Chapter 1 Foundation, Freedom House, and many more partners, the ADI had the honor of taking part in the Summit for Democracy side events, which took place in Lusaka. If you were there, can I just see some fire emojis in the chat if you were in Zambia with us? Yeah, some fire emojis, guys. If you were there, okay, yes, great. If you were there in spirit and in support, please also send your fire emojis so that we see that you're listening to us. Amazing. Wonderful. I see a lot more reaction, so thank you for that. So as we were saying, it was an emotional experience for many of us who actually got an opportunity to see each other for the first time. Not only that, but many of us had the chance to participate in an actual panel and literally present our arguments to a live audience. And so the purpose of this takeaway in particular is simply to revisit and to relive the best moment we've shared as a unit, so that even those who could not be with us in person still have an opportunity to tap into the knowledge we have acquired, the networks we have made, and of course, the lessons that we have heard. For those of us who can remember, if you can remember one of the things that we've discussed during any of the days we were in Zambia, I want you to type the title on the chat. Just type the title, only the title. Let me see it. Any title at all, any title. It could be elections. I'm not going to give you clues. Try to type whatever you can remember from any of the discussions we've had. Yes, Pan-Africanism. We have intergenerational engagement. Yes, the intergenerational engagement was definitely on Pan-Africanism. That's right. Anything more? All right, no worries. That is the purpose of today. So for the sake of structure, well, not tonight, this afternoon's conversation has actually been divided into different themes that were covered while we were participating in Lusaka. So topic 1 is elections as a pathway to democracy, and it was a youth panel, a fireside chat creative session. This is actually one of the first discussions that the ALI actually heavily contributed in. We had a panel of amazing young female leaders who came in and they did not come to play. They did an amazing work. I remember Nadej was there, Yara was there, Elizabeth was there, and it was just simply amazing. Then we have Pan-Africanism and African youth. As stated in the chat, we've got stocktake of the Zambian economy, what democratic renewal means for Africa and the global South, and finally, countries in crisis and the impact on citizens' rights to development and accessing economic opportunities. So you guys are definitely on the right page with what you are typing on the chat. So these were all presented by our distinguished YFLs, who had the privilege to be exposed to this information on the days they were respectively revealed. But of course, we don't want to take this takeaway. We don't want this takeaway to only be one-sided. We want you to also participate, and which is why we have prepared a question and answer session to allow everybody to contribute to the discussion. Furthermore, we also have some exciting stories about our travel experiences, which we will all get a chance to hear about, some for the first time and others not so much. But without any further ado, allow me to, well, that is before I introduce our first speaker, allow me to actually take you back memory lane for those who were in Zambia, and even for those who could not join us. We actually had the privilege of doing something much more than just contribute to our discussion. Thanks to the Ali's initiative to alleviate period poverty, we also had a pad drive. Can anybody remember the name of the school we went to visit in Lusaka? If you remember, please type it on the chat. That's right, Mumana. Mumana Primary School. And we went there on the 29th of March. We donated 50 reusable sanitary pads to 25 girls, which were handmade by some of the young leaders of the Amazon Leadership Initiatives that are based in Zambia. This was spearheaded by our program associate, who is the young, the great, the excellent Miss Exilda Mubanga. Can somebody just give her a round of applause on the chat? Yes, Ms. Exilda definitely did an amazing, amazing job. And she was not alone. We were an entire team that went to Mumana Primary School. And what happened was not just the menstrual health and hygiene talk, but the girls were also taught about how to take care of their bodies, and they received words of affirmation. Can any one of us remember what those words of affirmations were? If you can remember any word of affirmation that was shared at Mumana Primary School, just type it on the chat real quickly. Any word of affirmation that you heard while we were at Mumana, so that those who were not with us can also know that these words also apply to them. Yes, Black Girl, Your Dreams Are Valid. That is by Annette Sakala. You can also switch on your mics if you remember something. You don't necessarily just have to chat. Anybody else has something different? Do not water yourself down. You are limitless. Yes. Do not water yourself down to suit the masses. Oh, that's a powerful one, Milimo. Yes, you are definitely limitless. You are beautiful. That was also shared very much often. Well, let me not spoil the surprise for us. There are many more stories about what happened while we were in Lusaka that will be shared. So I will step away and allow our first presenter to come, and she will be sharing on elections as a pathway to democracy. She's a 22-year-old Togolese young female leader, a climate and gender activist, alumni of the Yali RLC Accra cohort, and Mandela Washington 2023 Fellow. Her name is Miss Nadej Abire Bumoge. And to welcome her, I just want everybody to switch on their cameras for 1 second and their mics and just give a warm round of applause for Miss Nadej. Miss Nadej, the floor.
Hello.
We can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay, do I have the floor? Sorry, I had a network problem. So I couldn't hear you from the beginning.
Please carry.
Yeah, do I have the floor?
Yes, please carry on, Nadette.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I really have a network problem. I think it's due to my location, but I'll try to make it. I'm so honored, to be part of this panel. And I'm really honored to be chosen actually to take part, to attend the Summit for Democracy in Zambia. And I'm happy to share what we've learned, what you have shared there with you guys. So I'll be talking on elections as a pathway to democracy. And of course, we had 3 subtitles. And the first one was the youth participation in governance processes and the intergenerational divides in political participation. And the third one was the participation of youth in fostering innovation and creativity in governance and electoral processes. So specifically, I want to share my my own experiences on the participation of youth in fostering innovation and creativity in governance and electoral processes, and especially answer the question of how can the government promote the youth participation in governance and electoral processes. So first of all, I would like you guys to know that there are several ways in which government can promote the youth participation in governance and electoral processes. And these ways includes engaging young people in decision making, providing education and training, establishing youth-focused institutions, facilitating youth participation in elections, and also creating youth-friendly policies. So first of all, governments can involve young people in decision-making processes by creating some opportunities for them to provide inputs on policy development, implementation, and evaluation. And this could actually be done through public consultations, online forums, or focus group discussions. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, governments can provide education and training programs for young people to equip them with the knowledge and skills necessary to participate in governance and electoral processes. And this could actually include some civics education, some leadership trainings, and also some media literacy. And I would really love to mention, the Amazon Leadership Initiative that has been doing a fabulous job with young African leaders, and I'm also honored to be part of. So third, I was talking about establishing youth-focused institutions. So governments can establish youth institutions or departments that specifically cater to the needs of young people, such as youth councils, youth parliaments, or youth advisory boards. So these institutions can provide opportunities for young people to engage in governance, develop their leadership skills, and contribute to policy discussions. And permit me to share a typical example in Togo. In our country, for example, we have a youth council, but the issue is still there because it is close to a specific political party. So there is still, something to be done actually, because the youth need to be given a space and discuss their needs. As you all know, only youth can really explain the challenges of the society and actually provide some relevant and sustainable challenges. As I was saying, governments can also facilitate youth participation in elections by creating voter education programs, providing information on voter registration, and making some polling stations more accessible to young people. And in addition, governments can consider encouraging young people to stand for elections and appointing them, young people, to leadership positions in ministries. Because if they don't have the lead, they won't actually contribute, to the development of their country. And in our country, the youngest minister is 28 years old, and this is not enough. She may be a minister, but she's not representing the youth voices because she doesn't have the power to take decisions. She's only there to do what she's told to do. And finally, governments can design policies that address the specific needs and concerns of young people, such as access to education, employment opportunities, and affordable healthcare. So this will actually help to engage young people in the political process and demonstrate the government's commitment to meeting their needs. Overall, ladies, as Nelson Mandela said, what for us without us is against us. So if our governments want to see us participating in governance and electoral processes, they should and they have to include us in decision making. Else, they will be just playing with our emotions. Thank you so much, and Black Child, your dreams are valid.
Yes, indeed. And thank you so much, Miss Nadej, for that very important reminder. If you were empowered by this short feedback by Miss Nadej, can I see some fire emojis? Fire emojis from our next ministers of finance, our next presidents and vice presidents, our next so many places to occupy, not just in government, but everywhere. Can I just see some fire emojis from everybody? Yes, I see it. Thank you. And I believe that we will definitely take this to heart and remember how valuable we are in all spheres of society. And now to our second representation, which is entitled Pan-Africanism and the African Youth, which will be presented by another brilliant young female leader, Grace Besa. Her name is a political scientist who graduated from the University of Zambia in 2021. She is passionate about mental health and the advancement of women in the political and leadership spheres. She is an avid networker and is always looking to collaborate with others for the advancement of causes that she is passionate about. You know how we do it, ladies. Cameras on, mics on, a round of applause for Miss Grace Besa. Grace, the floor is all yours. Are you with us, Grace? The floor is all yours.
Okay, I think I'm back now. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I might have to switch off my video for connectivity's sake. Hello, everyone. So the topic that was assigned to me and that I was also very passionate about was Pan-Africanism and the African youth. To begin with, African youth, the world belongs to us. And I'm going to start by describing what Pan-Africanism means. So Pan-Africanism is a worldwide movement, ideology, or a vehicle that aims to encourage and strengthen bonds of solidarity between indigenous and people who are not in Africa, but are Black and they're African. So Pan-Africanism's main aim is to unite the Black, either in the diaspora, even within Africa, against any form of injustice, against any form of suffering, simply because we are Black. The movement is very geopolitical. It's a geopolitical project. And the main aim of the movement is for all Africans to move back to Africa, for all Africans to enjoy Africa, to enjoy the benefits of Africa, and to make Africa what we'd like and love to see it to be. It's about owning our own sovereignty. It's unfortunate that even within Africa, you might be in Africa, but you don't own your sovereignty. So this is the time that we're standing and saying, Africa for Africans. It's a time to regenerate an economic system on the African continent, because we do hear stories of, oh my God, Africa is not doing well, there's poverty and everything. So this is the time for us now to stand up and say, you know what, let's regenerate an economy. It's about time that as Africans and as African youths, for us to take ourselves seriously. It's very important to take yourself seriously, because once you start taking yourself seriously, the world will follow suit. So it's time for us to create the African government, to develop our own. Already, the African Union has set up this agenda of the Agenda 2063. So the Agenda 2063 is just the planning of how we'd love to see Africa in the next 50 years. So some of the things that we aim from the Agenda 63 to see in the next 50 years for Africa is getting a prosperous Africa. An Africa that is united, an Africa that has good governance, an Africa that is very democratic and it respects the rule of law. Above all, an Africa that has identity. An Africa where we're able to tell our own stories, we're able to cherish our culture, we're able to be proud and Black. A people-driven Africa. An Africa that doesn't shy away from being a global player. An Africa that participates fully and proudly. And the best people to drive this agenda is, of course, us, the African youth. We can begin by speaking, by making actions, by making sure that we're changing policies in ways that if we see something we're not happy about something, or the government is not doing something that we do not like, we should come together as African youth and drive to changing policies, to be innovative, to be creative. And from where we are now to where we're going, I think we are still on track. And above everything, one of my major takeaways was the destiny of the continent of Africa is in our hands as the youth. And together, we can carry Africa forward. This is something that we as African youth need to be very conscious of. We're on a journey of self-discovery. And as we're on a journey of self-discovery, I can even say that this is the month of May, and every 25th May, we celebrate Africa Freedom Day. So on this 25th of May, African Freedom Day, since the first African Union was established, is going to be 60 years old. How are we reflecting? Are we equal human beings? Are we being respected? Do we respect ourselves? Are we authentic? Because most times when we think about Africa, sometimes they think of us as copycats. And now it's time for us not to feel like, oh, we need to copy what America is doing to bring it to Africa or China or India. But as Africans, as African youth, as Pan-Africanists, we can have our own ideas. We can use our own brains and not be copying, but to innovate. So therefore, African youth, we were very much encouraged to be united, to mobilize, to ideate, and to be very much Black and proud. And the major question that was posed to us was, will we be colonized voluntarily? We were colonized before, many years ago. But at this point, with everything that we know, will we be colonized voluntarily? Another key takeaway that I got was for us as Africans to move as a group. We have the Agenda 2063. Let's jump on that. Let's believe in the dream. We already have a vision about the Africa that we want to see. So let's stop thinking at our current situation, but let's think about the end in mind and work for it. We all have to be intentional. We all have to come together as a community that speaks one voice, a communal voice. And we have to be unified, a unified voice. Another key takeaway that I got from the summit was how we should be a home to one another. A lot of things are happening in countries in Africa. How are we reacting? Are we being a home to each other? Are we being each other's brothers' keepers? Because it's not just about feeling like, oh, it's only my country that needs to improve and to shine bright. But all of us can come together collectively, have a communal voice and rise up together. So yes, we need to be a home to one another. We need to return decent leadership. And even if we might be speaking different languages, because there's French, there's English, there's Portuguese, there are all these languages maybe. But regardless, we will move together, because even in our differences, we are beautiful together when we rise together. Another major key takeaway that I got from the summit was African youth, if you're not at the table, you are the menu. When I heard this, I was like, oh my God. So it provoked us to think about what are we waiting for? We need to occupy the space now, because in the next couple of years, it's us who are going to be we are the leaders of today and tomorrow, not just of tomorrow. So we need to take up space now. We need to participate in governance. We need to contribute our thoughts. We need to be united together to fight towards the same goal. Because even as Nadesh said, what is for us without us is against us. And the beauty that I saw when we participated in the summit was the intergenerational dialogue. It was very beautiful. It was how the older generation had to say, and they got wisdom from the older generation. But even the younger generation have solutions. We are the solutions. So it was beautiful, and it's something that now we have to keep on driving towards, because again, and I will emphasize on this, African youth, if you're not at the table, you're the menu. Be in those meetings, and when we're in those meetings, we should speak, we should act, and we should go ahead and implement. Thank you so much. And this marks the end of my presentation.
Amazing work, Grace, and a round of applause for her. It is time that we as African play a proactive role in our continent, and of course the youth to take their place. Absolutely. And I want us to do something really special, something very memorable, and I want us to type one word or perhaps a short sentence of what you want Africa to be like. For instance, I want Africa to be a place where men and women are treated with equality, equal respect for who they are, for what they stand for. What do you want for Africa? What do you want for this continent? Write it down on the chat. What kind of Africa do you envision? What kind of Africa do you want? Right, Damilola says, I want Africa to be united. Absolutely, I agree. I agree. The division is so unnecessary. It is so, it promotes stagnation. It's just discouraging. We need to be united. Yes, Nadesh says that she envisions a United States of Africa. And it is very possible. It is very, very possible. Innovative Africa, that is from Dokozo. Yes, that is true. Vanessa, I want Africa to be youth-led. Wow. I agree. I agree. And slowly but surely, it's happening all around us. It's happening all around us. Yes, perhaps not to the degree that we might have wanted, but we are definitely not just sitting passively and accepting life to happen to us. Milimo says she wants a peaceful Africa. Absolutely. We all want a peaceful Africa where we can come together and move forward. Abby says a mentally united Africa. That has been one of the challenges, even within the AU, within South to South cooperations with African countries. There are lots of stories about how we are not one unit. We do not think in the same direction, but I believe that there is still hope. There is definitely still hope, and the youth can play a big role in actually channeling our thoughts in one direction, the direction of growth, the direction of peace, the direction of equality. Elizabeth says, I want to see the Africa that goes to other nations' aid and not always the receiving. And yes, that's true. It is time that we stop being the subject of study or the objects or commodity tossed around. It is time that we take our proactive roles as initiators and transformers of change. Yes, Nanyera, please forgive me if my pronunciation is wrong, but she says Africa, an Africa that has its own identity. Absolutely. We are not anyone's clone. We're not a copycat. We have our own individuality, and it deserves to be seen and heard. Thank you so much, ladies, for remaining engaged. Take screenshots of your answers, please. We want to see it on social media at the Amazon Leadership Initiative. So without any further ado, because time is definitely flying, I am just making sure that our next speaker is here. Yes, she is. So our third presentation today will be on the stocktake of the Zambian economy, which will now be presented by our very own shining star, who is a 16-year-old young female leader from South Africa, but she's based in Zambia. She has consistently performed well in her academic pursuits and is a proud member of the Southern Africa Caucus at the Amazon Leadership Initiative. Ladies, we've been doing it since the beginning of this event. Cameras on, mics on. Let us welcome a round of applause, Chinta. The floor is yours, Kagiso. Kagiso, if you are with us, would you kindly take the floor? I think that we might have a bit of a... can somebody please unmute Kagiso? Kagiso, is your mic fine now? Are you able to speak? Are you still with us? Can you please type on the chat to just let us know if you can hear us or if you are able to speak? Okay, she is here. Just trouble with your mic, I believe. If anyone is able to unmute Kagiso from where she is, can you please assist? The host.
So, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mary.
Okay, I have asked to unmute her, so she needs to accept.
All right. Kagiso, please accept. We cannot wait to hear you. Please accept so that we can continue. And let us know on the chat if you're still having trouble. Okay, Kagiso has accepted. Let's just give it 1 second. But in the meantime, so that we do not cut the flow of the conversation, we will be now introducing our next speaker who speaks after Ms. Kagiso. Ms. Kagiso, you'll have an opportunity to speak as soon as the technical issues are resolved. But for the moment, we'll now be introducing another brilliant young female leader who goes by the name of Miss Milimo Menza. She's a 24-year-old lawyer that has recently obtained her law degree from the University of Lusaka. She's a proud member of the Southern African Caucus, a passionate reader and writer that aspires to sprout in a career of fictional novels. She's a part-time business development manager, and her greatest ability lies in how calm and prompt she is. Now, here to discuss what democratic renewal means for Africa and the global South, here is none other than Ms. Milimo Menza. A round of applause for her, please.
Thank you, Divine. I hope everyone can hear me and see me.
Yes.
Okay, so based on the title of my presentation, Democratic Renewal and what it means for Africa and the Global South, I want to take the time to break down the heading before I get into the depths of the presentation. So basically, what does democratic renewal mean? It's basically a situation in which we get to live in a society that is free from segregation, racial discrimination, social biases, and other issues that divide us, be it as a continent and be it as a people on a global scale. And basically, the Global South is a term that is used to refer to the southern region of Africa, Latin America, Asia, Oceania. So basically, we're trying to imagine a life where, in fact, it's not even an imagination. The goal is to get to such a point where all these things won't matter and we will all just look at one another as a people. And then as a Pan-African network, before we even get into the depths of the Global South at large, our main concern is of our continent, of course, because we are trying to put our continent on the map. We're trying to get our continent to have genuine respect. So before we even show main concern towards the Global South, we want to speak or rather advocate for our continent. So one of my key takeaways from the summit is that Africa is a very traditional continent that has come a long way. We have made a ton of development, though we're still growing day by day. Once upon a time, we were colonized by various countries, be it from the West, be it from the East, and Europe as well. And eventually, some African countries had to be forced into dictatorship till eventually we evolved to democracy. A very good example is my country of origin, Zambia. We were once a British protectorate, then eventually we evolved into dictatorship under the first president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda the late. And now we are under democratic ruling that has been constantly going on under various political regimes. So another point that I can bring up that I learned and understood from the summit is that we as the youth really have to take an active role towards the development of our continent and our various countries, because many of the times we take a back seat because we feel we're too young or we're not good enough, because we lack experience, we're not mature enough, we're not old enough. But then before you know it, you blink and you're old, because once upon a time, even our parents or our grandparents who are currently our leaders were once youth as well, but because they always folded their arms or were too afraid to speak, time flew by and they never got their chance. But as for us, the case is different, because we do want to make a change. We do want to make our continent be seen and heard for once and not be degraded. So we ought to be present, we ought to be included, we ought to create spaces, we have to be very innovative. And honestly, apart from being innovative, it's one thing to have an idea, but we also have to take the time to execute those ideas, because the last thing we want to do is be sitting on gold mines or diamond mines of ideas. That will honestly help with political regimes evolving and us creating solutions for many of our problems that we are facing today, be it as a continent and also on a global scale. Another key takeaway that I got is that at the moment, we're having a modern scramble for Africa. We're hearing what's going on in the news with the situation with BRICS and the Western world and division, and how various African countries are honestly being divided because we're being forced to pick a side between the East and the West. But this is our time to unite as Africans, especially we as the youth, because this is our time to shine. This is our time to create a situation where we get to voice our opinions, we get to say what we want, we get to demand the change that we want. And so we have to unite, speak with one voice so that we can get a respectable and legitimate seat at the table and ensure that for once our race is held with utmost respect that it has solely deserved for generations and generations from the time of slavery to this day. So we honestly are striving our best to ensure that our continent is respected, our race, our color, be it as a people, as Africans, and also for our various countries and their interests, because each African country does have its own issues, be it when it comes to poverty and whatnot. So those were my key takeaways that I learned throughout the summit, and I hope it was inspiring, and I really enjoyed the experience, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Milimo. Ooh, if you were to do a presidential campaign, you'd have all of our votes, because the eloquence, the information that you just summarized for us is just top notch. So a round of applause for Ms. Milimo. I definitely liked what she said about us taking that role into innovating and developing our continent and being proud of who we are as Black Africans. So way to go indeed, Milimo. So we just want to check how everything is going on Kagiso's side. Kagiso, are you able to hear us? Can you speak and switch on your camera, or are you still experiencing technical difficulties? Let us know.
I'm here. I'm able to speak, but I won't be able to switch on my camera.
Understood. But it is a pleasure to have you, everybody. Please, again, a round of applause for Ms. Bettina Kagiso Chintala, who will now be presenting on the stock take of the Zambian economy. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Divine, and thank you for the round of applause. I really appreciate it. I would like to start off by saying that it was something very wonderful and something very honorable for me to be able to attend the Summit for Democracy. And I am actually very happy to be able to bring back all the information that I learned back to all the young female leaders present today. As mentioned, I will be speaking about the stock take of Zambia's economy. And this was actually a topic that was covered at the Summit for Democracy. And as if I remember very correctly, the gentleman who covered this topic actually mentioned that Zambia's economy is not in its best place at the moment. He mentioned that Zambia's economy at the moment owes $18.6 billion, 5.6 of which is owed to China. Imagine $18.6 billion. And some of you may be asking yourselves, how did Zambia get in such a stiff situation? How did Zambia find itself in such a stiff situation? And for me to be able to answer that question, I'll need to take you back a bit through Zambia's history, starting from Zambia's independence. And so if we look at Zambia's independence, Zambia gained independence in 1960. And in 1971, Zambia became a dictatorship, and it was reverted back into a democracy in 1990. This sudden change of government was caused by the failure to stabilize Zambia's economy by the president who was there at the time, Mr. Kenneth Kaunda. And after he was removed from power, another gentleman, Mr. Frederick Chiluba, became president of Zambia. That was around 1990 to 2002. Unlike Mr. Kenneth Kaunda, Mr. Frederick tried his best to be able to boost Zambia's economy, and he brought in various reforms, but his victory was short-lived due to corruption. From 2002 to 2008 is where you actually begin to see Zambia's peak, and where you begin to see Zambia's best time, where its economy actually kind of stabilized and was in a good position. And the president at that time was His Excellency Levi Mwanawasa. During his time in power, he implemented a number of policies that contributed to Zambia's economy and governmental progress. And these economic reforms were actually aimed at reducing the government's inventational economy. And actually, basically, he put so many good reforms that were there to actually boost Zambia's economy. And this led to the increase in foreign investment and economic growth. Another thing that was there at the time was that at that time, Zambia's GPD grew. Zambia's GPD was growing by an average of 5% each year during his time in power. Mind you, he was in power from 2002 to 2008. So each year, Zambia's economy would grow by 5% when he was in power. Another thing that he managed to do was reduce the debt rate of Zambia. And before he came into power, the debt rate was at 7 billion, and he managed to reduce that debt rate. Sadly, Mr. Mwanawasa died, and another gentleman named Lupia Banda became president of Zambia. Although he brought in a number of positive reforms, although he brought in a number of positive reforms, he also faced a challenge that most presidents faced at his time, and that challenge was the challenge of financial crisis, which led to the drop of demand for copper and other commodities, and in turn, which led to the decline of export earnings and the slowdown of Zambia's economy and reduction in job opportunities. Another challenge that Mr. Banda faced was high inflation, and it peaked at over 20% when he entered power. So the government took steps to address this, such as raising interest rates and inflation, but they weren't as successful as they wished to be. So after Mr. Lupia Banda was removed from power, another man named Michael Sata came into power. So from here, this is I'm sure all of you have noticed that Zambia went through being able to have a stable, somewhat not very stable economy, to going to to rising and rising till we had a somewhat stable economy, and then dropping again back into an unstable economy. And this would have actually been solved, but then at the same time, with a lot of corruption comes comes basically the decrease of a country's economy. And as I mentioned, after Mr. Lupia Banda was removed from power, Michael Sata tried to increase Zambia's economy and somewhat succeeded. And after he tried his best, he also died, unfortunately. And when he died, the vice president at that time, Mr. Edgar Lungu, is the one who came into power. Now, this from here is when, ladies and gentlemen, you will actually begin to see Zambia's actual problems, where Zambia began to face really big problems in its economy and its growth rate. So when Mr. Edgar Lungu came into power, another thing that when Mr. Edgar Lungu came in power, something that he faced was something very bad that he faced was also the COVID-19 pandemic, which wasn't very good because this led to high inflation, and it also led to the reduction of copper, of exporting copper. And because of this is where Mr. Edgar Lungu began to borrow money from several countries. And when he began to borrow money from several countries, this was to at least be able to stabilize Zambia's economy, because at that time, Zambia was not making enough to be able to take it through the year. So basically, Zambia's expenditure was much higher than Zambia's earnings. And Mr. Edgar Lungu was trying to level everything up. So he kept on borrowing money so that he could be able to stabilize this economy. But then at the same time, there have been rumors that most of the money that he was borrowing was not actually going to the country's economy, but was going to his own personal needs and the personal needs of those around him. Though that rumor has not been confirmed, it is believed by most people in Zambia. So this, if we were actually to divide Zambia's external debt equally among every person in the country, each person would owe approximately $634. Imagine that, $634. If we convert that to kwacha, that would come to approximately 11,412 kwacha per person in Zambia. And I'm pretty sure you know that Zambia has quite a high population. So after Zambia's debt increased, Mr. Lungu was taken out of power, and Mr. Hichilema Hakainde was brought into power in August 2021. And although it is too early to say what the long-term economy impact of Mr. Hichilema's leadership will be, we have reasons to be cautious and optimistic about Zambia's economy in the future. And it is important for us to monitor the developments through the coming months and years of Mr. Hichilema's leadership. I hope I've been able to, as you've seen, the theft of wealth in Zambia has had a devastating impact on us as Zambian people, and it has really put us in a bad place. And right now, I would say as a country, the only thing we are looking forward to is relief. And I hope that I've been able to at least shed a bit of light on Zambia's current economic situation and been able to help you at least understand a bit how we got to this point of owing $8.6 billion. I'll give the mic back to you, Divine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kagiso. And wow, it's really concerning to see the individual case scenarios of the type of economic challenges that our continent is experiencing. That is on national levels. But we still believe in a turnaround, and we're not going to let our hopes go down. But either who's, ladies, please continue to engage on the chat. And although I will be presenting our last speaker or last presenter for the day, I would like each and every single one of us to just get their questions ready. Get your questions ready, because right after our final presenter, we will have an opportunity to open the floor to any one of you who has a question to any one of the presenters who shared the discussions on their respective topics. So we do implore you to engage, to not be shy with your questions. It can be a rhetorical question, it can be a general question, it can be a national level question, but we just want to hear from you. But now presenting on countries in crisis and the impact on citizens' rights to development and accessing economic opportunities is a 22-year-old medical student from Zambia, a well-rounded young lady who is passionate about exploring different forms of art and entertainment, while also dedicating her time to helping those in need. Yes, you've guessed her name right. Her name is Miss Elizabeth Juma. A round of applause for her as she takes the virtual stage.
Thank you so much, Divine, for the warm introduction. I hope everyone can hear me. I just want to thank you for the opportunity I've been given, first of all, in attending the Summit for Democracy. I really enjoyed the whole experience and finally meeting my young female leaders and engaging. And then also, I want to give thanks for the opportunity to share what I learned during the session on the countries in crisis and the impact on citizens' rights. So some countries that have been facing crisis and that are currently in crisis at the moment, we have Sudan, which is currently facing some crisis, Mali, Burkina Faso, we had Nigeria that faced crisis as well, and many other African countries. So some crises have been taken note of, most of which most African countries are facing. And one of the crises is the crisis of lack of female and youth participation in governance. So during the session, a question was actually posed saying, why aren't the youth and the females leading? I mean, they are capable, but why aren't they leading? So some barriers were actually identified that are hindering the effective and active participation of the youth and the females. So one of the barriers was patriarchy, where the older generation and the men are actually taking up key positions. They are participating, they're having full participation in society and in government while excluding the women and the youth. Other barriers were due to cultural and due to economic. So these were some of the barriers that are hindering effective and active participation of women and the youth. Another crisis is a lack of democratic policy. So with this one, it has been noticed that most governments tend to import experts from abroad, from the West, from Europe, from Asia, to come and make policies in African countries. So one of the solutions that was given is that Africa must have a unified mind and come up with policies that can make the best out of its resources. So in coming up with these policies, Africans have been advised that Africa must first identify what Europe wants, what Asia wants, what America wants, and then put in these policies and implement them. Because each country comes with their own agenda. America and Asia do not come with the same agenda. They come with different agendas. So Africa must identify what America wants and what Asia wants and what Europe wants, and make these policies and implement them. Another crisis is the crisis of leadership. Most leaders have actually been noticed that they are very corrupt and they are incompetent and they portray bad governance. As Kakito said, with the rumors that were going on and that are still going on, especially during the COVID-19 crisis that occurred in Zambia, it was said that because every time during the news would receive word saying Zambia has been funded to solve the issue of the COVID-19, but we never really saw any work trying to eliminate or solve the problem. So everyone in the country would wonder, where's the money going? And so the rumors came about saying they're using money for their own benefits. And then furthermore, more rumors came about saying they're building houses in this area, in that area. So the fact that most leaders that have been elected have had a tendency of having a corrupt mind, being incompetent and portraying bad governance. So this is another crisis that Africa is really facing. Another crisis is the crisis of social fragmentation and security. So with this one, it has been seen that some countries in Africa, they have portrayed failure to manage ethical diversity, for example, in Zambia. And then also we face issues where there are some external parties which are allowed to interfere with the country's issues and initiating conflicts between two parties of the same country. A good example is Zambia, my country as well. The previous government worked hand in hand with the Chinese, and the current government is working hand in hand with the United States. So with these two parties, according to rumors again, saying no, the Chinese were supporting the previous government, and then the Americans are facing helping the current government. There was a time when it was towards elections where people were actually saying if the UPND come into power, all the Chinese are going to be kicked out of Zambia. But we are happy that they were not, thankfully. And then another crisis is a crisis of climate change.
So like I said, after you first.
So this is the crisis of climate change was one of the root causes of crisis in Mali. So due to climate variabilities, due to drought, this is one of the root causes that actually induced some crisis in Mali. And then another crisis is the crisis of states in failure to place guardrails to prevent and address these conflicts. So as a result of states failing to place guardrails to prevent and address conflicts, most citizens have been endangered, and the most affected during such crises, such as, for example, like war or a lot of disasters, are actually women, children, and the old people. These are the most affected people during such crises. And then the impact of these crises on the citizens is that some citizens' rights to practice voting or to participate in election processes was deprived. The example that was given was internally displaced persons. It was said that the ones in Nigeria, in Burkina Faso, and Mali. In Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken, some were partially included, and then in Burkina Faso, I think they were included for a while before the military coup happened, and then in Mali, they were their rights of voting were completely taken away from them. And then another impact of crisis on the citizens' rights is closure of schools. A good example again is Sudan. Schools have been closed, so every school-going child has been the right to attend school has been deprived because they're unable to go to school due to safety reasons. It was the same with Burkina Faso due to security reasons and all that. The school-going children were unable to report to school, so schools were closed for since January this year. Schools were closed, and then another impact is economic crisis. This impact actually it affected not only the citizens but the countries around them, those that they were trading with. It also affected them. There was a high cost of things just became expensive, and then there's maybe shortage of facilities, shortage of food. A good example again is Sudan. It's the same thing that is happening. People are unable to get access to food because it's not there. For those that are able, things are very expensive at the moment. And then lastly, some solutions were given that can actually bring back a good Africa and limit the crisis that is going on. So some of the solutions that were given is that Africa must invest in industrialization. And then Africa must come up with policies. As Elia said, Africa must have a unified mind, identify what each country needs from the continent and come up with policies. Another solution was that Africa must invest in research. A good example that was given was the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa had to wait for Asia and Europe and America to come up with a vaccine. And with the way things were being solved, for example, in Zambia, especially when the COVID-19 hit, most people who were affected were actually told to just sit under the sun, saying the more heat, the more warmth, the more the virus is being eliminated. So that's how people are being cured from the COVID-19 pandemic. And then no one was thinking of, well, there were some schools, for example, UNZA, they had some students that were actually trying to find how to make the vaccine, but I don't know, maybe because they failed multiple times and then they just gave up. So they didn't push it any further. They just stopped the research. So Africa must invest in research more. And we all know that Rome wasn't built in one day. Even these light bulbs, the person who made them failed 1,000 times, or should I say, the way he said it, he found 1,000 ways that it could not work. So if Africa invests more in research, then we'll be able to come up with our own vaccines very soon. And then another solution is that Africa must make good use of its resources and not always wait for the West to come to their rescue. So we have a lot of minerals. We can make good use of them. We can make bracelets, we can make necklaces, earrings. We have gold. We can't always sell gold as a raw material and then expect others to make earrings and necklaces and other things and then sell it back to us at a very expensive price. So it also pinpoints to investing more in industrialization. And then A question I'm living with everyone, including myself, is when is Africa going to go to Europe, Asia, and America's aid? So this marks the end of my presentation. I hope you got to learn something. And thank you so much. Over to you, Divine.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that. You took the words right out of our mouths. Like, I think we have brilliant minds. We have brilliant ideas. We've got brilliant people, and it is time for us to harness all of those ideas to become a tangible evidence that will turn us from victims to innovators in our own continent and the world at large. So thank you for showing us that despite the number of crises that we have around us, both in our individual countries and amongst each other, there are always solutions that can be developed. So Elizabeth, our hats go off to you. That was a very good presentation. And now moving on to our question and answer session. I would now like to open the floor to all of you young female leaders, and obviously anyone who has clicked the link because they were interested in hearing about what we contributed while we were in Zambia. Please, over to you. Tell us or share with us some of the questions that you have, some of perhaps the concerns that you have, or comments of today's discussion. Over to you, everybody, please. Any questions? Any questions? Any comments? Final comments? All right, going once. Mary, do you have a question for our speakers? Or perhaps a comment? Or anybody, Abby, Grace, even the speakers, do you have a question for our young female leaders? If not, we will move on. But my question to you is this. After hearing everything that we have recapped about the role of young people, about how crises are affecting us, about democratic renewal and Pan-Africanism, my question to us, not just to you, but to all of us is this: what are we going to do about it? What role are we going to play as the youth in Africa in order to get to the bottom of everything that is hindering the voices of young people from being heard, everything that is hindering the continent from moving forward? So please think about that. So as we all know, all good things must eventually come to an end, and we are closely reaching the end of our event. I will be introducing two special ladies, one who will be unpacking for us the Ali's travel experience to Zambia, personally her own experience, and also another young female leader who will obviously come and give the final remarks. So the first wonderful and amazing young female leader who is going to come up is Miss Mary Poli, right? Who is a graduate of international studies and diplomacy, a digital entrepreneur, a fashion designer, and the administrative and human resource associate of DLE. And right after that, we will have Miss Exilda Mubanga, and I will introduce her right after Miss Mary's short presentation on our travel experiences. We are way past time, so we will keep it short and brief so that Miss Exilda can come and wrap up the discussion. Thank you, Miss Mary, over to you.
Thank you so much, Divine. Thank you. Hi, Divine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. I'm basically going to share an experience on my travel to Zambia. So before I begin, I like to see emojis in the chat box if you're ready for your first international trip or your next international trip. Let me see some fire emojis in the chat box. All right, I'm sure Elizabeth is ready for her next trip. Great. So basically, when you're planning to have an international trip, some of the things that you need to put into consideration so that you're not placed in a corner. The very first thing is to print out your documents. Endeavor to print out all your documents, your accommodation, your flight itinerary, your visa, where you're traveling to requires a visa. So make sure to print it out. Then the next thing to do is to check the airline's luggage requirements. Now, some airlines have, or all airlines have their own personal luggage requirements. So make sure that you check and be sure you're not, overpacking or underpacking at any point, because most times you need to have your big box, then your carry-on luggage, and then your personal bag. So make sure that they're not more than the expected kilograms. Now, the next thing is ensure to get to the airport 2 to 3 hours, in fact, 3 hours before your check-in time. Now, why is this? Because most times, there are probably some check-ins that you need to do, and there are lots of queues oftentimes. So you want to be on time and be done with your queue so that you can settle in and then, take pictures and have fun, right? Because it's a trip, it's an experience. You need to enjoy the experience. If you're not settled, there's no way you can enjoy the experience. So be on time so that you can do your check-in. Now, most times you should note this. When you're having an international travels, there are 4 check-ins. The first thing is to have your check-in. Sometimes you are allowed, some airlines can allow you to check in online, but some you're not allowed to check in online. So you can check in online or you get to the airport to do your check-in. So you can check in your bags, whatever luggage you have, right? And then you have to pass through security. Now, passing through security, you have to take off literally almost everything, like your shoes, your bag, take out your phones, your hat, whatsoever that is metal. You put them on a trail and the likes of it. Then you can't pass the security with any liquid. So in case you're carrying a drink, your cream, like your full bottle of your cream or perfumes, it's either you give it to someone that came to the airport with you or you give it to the airport security. You will not be allowed to pass with that. And then finally, you get to pass through immigration, where you present your passport and then you board. So these are the 4 steps before you finally take your flight, right? Check-in, security, immigration, and then boarding, right? Another thing I would like to advise is that make sure to wear an easy to remove shoes. At the point where you get to pass security, you'll be made to take out your shoes. So imagine if maybe you're wearing a very difficult shoe and you have maybe 2 layovers, depending on where you're going to. It means you have to constantly take out your shoes when you are to pass security. So you can easily wear, something that could just slip on and slip out, right? Then another major thing, if there's anything that you take out of this session, is please do not forget your passport at any point. Now, it's been said that your passport is more like a diamond, so you have to protect it, right? It's a necessity for you to protect it. Make sure to put your passport inside your bag, not your pocket, not put it inside your bag at a safe space so that at any point where you need to bring it out, you can easily take it out and put it back. Now, at no point should you have your passport maybe just on your hand or put it on your legs, because you do not know if it might fall off or something. You might just forget it, and that would begin another hassle for you. So you don't want that. Ensure to exchange your currency. You're going to another country that is not your country, so ensure to exchange your currency to either dollar or the currency of the country that you're going to. Right? Make sure to get cold jackets. I think this was something I failed to do. I got a very light jacket. Right? Although the country I was going to was not a very cold one, but my flights from the connecting flights I had to my country, it was really cold. Like right from the beginning of that flight to the end, I was literally very cold. So if there's any mistake you make, please endeavor to carry a jacket, a very thick jacket. And then the hotel transport. There's always provision for hotel transport, but in any case that there is no provision for hotel transport, that is where your extra money comes in place, so that you can not be stranded. You can easily take a taxi to your hotel, and even when you're coming back, you can easily take a taxi to the airport. All right. Make sure to carry your power banks, your travel pillow, because of the chairs. Sometimes, or most times, the chairs are not so comfortable. So you should invest in a travel pillow just for your neck to be comfortable, especially if you're having a very long flight, right? Now, I'm going to give a bit of my experience, right, on how had really, like, my travel was really challenging. And that started from when I got to Lusaka. Immediately, I landed at Lusaka. Now, I had my passport just on my legs, and then I stood up to get to the restroom, and then I forgot. So it fell off. I didn't pick it. So when I came back, I just picked up my bag, my personal bag, and came down from the plane. It was not until I got to security, I was asked, where's your passport? And I'm like, oh my God, it just fell off, right? Now, they will not allow you to go back. At any point when you come down from, when you alight from a plane and you get to your destination, most times you're not allowed to go back. You can only tell, the security to contact the plane. So they'll radio the plane to ask them to check. And they might not want to check very well, because maybe they have another another trip to make or something. They might not check very well, and that might just leave you stranded. So when that happened, they could not find the passport. So I had to stay at the airport or sleep at the airport from 2 a.m., right, till about 2 p.m. that day, for me to wait for another flight that was going to take me back to Addis, because I traveled from Nigeria. From Nigeria, I traveled to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, and then from Ethiopia, I got to Lusaka, Zambia. So from Lusaka, I had to go back to Addis. It was when I got to Addis, that was when I saw my passport at Ethiopian Airways office. And then I had to take another flight again to Lusaka. Trust me, this was not happening in seconds. It was hours. I left Lagos on Monday, and as at Wednesday, I was still on the air. So you do not want to have, this kind of travel experience. That's why I am sharing my experience with you. If there is anything you have to keep safe, really safe, is your passport, right? Now, also, some of the things that I learned through the course of this journey that I had to Zambia, though it was my first experience traveling outside my country, is that in life, you just have to be persistent. You just have to be persistent in life. You have to have a lot of faith in what you believe in and what you want to do. that was what was pushing me. That was what carried me, because the trip was quite challenging. Imagine being on air from Monday to about Wednesday. It wasn't funny. So I always try to remind myself that there's nothing that can limit me. I am limitless. And with that, I was able to, get to Zambia. Although I missed some part of the event, but I also attended the event, met my fellow YFLs, and it was an awesome experience. So I believe that I've been able to, you know, enlighten you on some travel tips that you need to know before having your first trip. And I'm sure I want to see you that, at our next trip, at our next yearly trip, I want to see every one of us. And that's bye from me. So thank you so much. Back to you, Divine.
Thank you so much, Mary. And we believe that we have taken note of everything that we need to keep in mind on our next travel adventure. You are such a brave person, and we admire your perseverance. So, ladies, we have come to the end of our event. But before we do that, some final remarks will be given by the one and only Programs Associate of the Alley, who is Miss Exilda Mbanga. She's passionate about the development of young girls and women. She works with adolescents in the rural parts of Zambia to teach them various life skills. She's also an economist who's passionate about fine literacy. So a round of applause, please, for Miss Exilda Mbanga.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm clear. I'm in a bit of a noisy place, but I have to find somewhere to stop and just give a final remarks. I just want to thank everyone for sparing your time to just listen, because the Amazon Leadership Initiative is dedicated to ensuring that we keep sharing information amongst each other, in as much as we could have everyone attend the summit in Zambia, but from the few people that have attended, we want to ensure that each and every member of the Amazon Leadership Initiative gets insight of what was done from the various leaders, from different specialized different skills and the knowledge that we gained, because they got to share important issues and exchange ideas on how we can work towards a common goal. I think the main takeaway from everything is that we should all be one, which calls for Ubuntu, because if we are united as we are united as youth, it is going to be much easier for us to work towards the common goal of alleviating gender inequality, that is the Amazon Leadership Initiative, and other issues that affect us as Africa. So I just want to thank everyone, and for those who are not yet part of the Amazon Leadership and you like to be part of us, please feel free to send us an email at info@thealley.org. And I'd also just want to bring up is that even as you didn't get to attend the summit, but we have a very our biggest event, which is the Amazon Leadership Initiative Leadership Forum. We'll be having a third one this year on the 27th of October and the 28th of October. So be on the lookout, because we'll be opening the application soon. So the Leadership Forum is an opportunity for young female leaders to meet with other luminaries, where they get to inspire them, share various issues that affect us as a collective whole. Anyway, without wasting much time, as I'm
Exilda, can you still hear us?
everyone, so that if you have any questions, any queries, our inboxes are always open. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miss Exilda. Can everybody hear me? I think that there was a network issue somewhere there. Is everyone able to hear me? Hello, anyone? Can anyone hear me? Please just show some sign of life. Okay, great. Well, we've come to the end. We have come to the end of our takeaway event. But before we go, we just want to take a quick family photo. Mary, if you can take a picture for us on your side. I think my screen is too small to capture everyone's faces here. Are you able to help us take a picture, Mary, or even Nurat?
Yes, I can do that. All right,
Okay.
thanks so much. We can turn on our videos so that I can take the photo, including mine.
Big smiles, everyone.
Oh my God, it's so dark. Let me put on my light. Okay, smiles, everyone. Nice, another one. Yes, Elizabeth, I see you. Okay. Thanks so much. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have yourselves an amazing evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And we cannot wait to have many more adventures with you. It is good night from us to you. Much love, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks so much.